start the video on the drive on a lovely early fall afternoon for the 1956 Lincoln Premier two-door hardtop coupe. This was Lincoln's top model in 1956. The previous series, the Capri, for 4 years before this, that had been the top model, was now demoted to the entry series Lincoln. And Lincoln was also building the Continental Mark II at this time, which was supposedly a separate division of Ford Motor Company. It's always fascinated me that the only luxury car manufacturers left in the United States, the only two left, Cadillac and Lincoln, that both companies were founded by the same man, Henry M. Leland. If you look at the Cadillac driving video, I talk about the history of Cadillac with Leland and how Cadillac became part of William C. Durant's new General Motor Corporation. And Leland was kept on for several years running Cadillac, but after a few years he had a falling out with Durant, and he sold his stock, sold his GM stock, and decided to start a different company. And as a staunch New England Republican, which sounds rather strange today, but that's the way it was 100 years ago, he named the new company for his longtime hero, Abraham Lincoln. So this was the founding of Lincoln, and this was just about in time for the First World War, and I believe it was just 2 days after the founding of the company that Lincoln landed a lucrative government contract to build Liberty aircraft engines. Unlike other automobile manufacturers, after World War I ended, they could simply return to automobile production. Leland had no car to return to, so he set about to develop his new Lincoln car, and he had to go heavily in debt because he insisted on the finest machine tools in the world. He was such a stickler for precision and accuracy, high quality manufacturing. And it was not until November 1921 that the first Leland built Lincoln went on the market. And there was no finer car built in the world at this time, but the styling left a whole lot to be desired. This is not something that Leland worried about. He was interested in quality. He thought that would be enough to sell any car. Some compared these Leland Lincolns to cars built before World War I. Not a strong selling point in 1921 and 1922. And it didn't take long until Leland's Lincoln Company was in serious trouble with the creditors. And he had to do the same thing again. There was a bailout in buying the company, and this time it came from another Henry Ford. And so Ford incorporated Lincoln into the Ford Motor Company as a high-priced line to supplement the Model T. This is mainly at the urging of his son Edsel Ford, who was made general manager at Lincoln. And Leland was president, but he could not get along with Henry Ford at all. And just 4 months later, he left the Lincoln Company completely and sold all of the stock. I might point out that Leland at this time was in his mid-70s when all of this was happening. Well, Edsel Ford had a good eye for styling, and Ford-produced Lincolns continued the high quality, but with much more streamlined manufacturing techniques, and Lincoln became an established make. And during the heyday of the big classic cars in the 1930s, the Lincoln KB, with its 448 cubic inch, 150 horsepower V12 engine, and some of the finest custom bodies ever produced, it was as good as any car, any classic car that anyone was producing at that time. But it was a bad time to try to sell such cars in the Great Depression. And in 1936, Lincoln brought out a medium price, or maybe a medium high price car, a line that was called the Lincoln Zephyr. And it was really the first successfully streamlined car. And they sold well. They also had V12 engines, but they couldn't even compare to what was in the great Lincoln KB. These Lincoln V12 engines were simply Ford flathead V8s with 2 extra cylinders added on each side, and they had lots of problems with the engine. They were first rated about 120 horsepower, but then the later ones were downgraded to 110 horsepower. And after World War II, there were no more of the senior Lincolns, the K series, just what had been the Lincoln Zephyr, but the Zephyr was dropped, and these cars were called just Lincoln. And they continued with the flathead V12 engine. I might point out that there was also a car of the Lincoln Continental built, which was started by Edsel Ford, a customized car that he had specially built on the Lincoln Zephyr chassis to have for him to drive around down in Florida. And it so impressed his friends there that he called back and said he could sell 1,000 of them. We need to start building this car, and that's really how the initial Lincoln Continental started. They went into series production in 1940-41. They were restyled 42, and then they were also sold in limited numbers in 46, 47, and 48. Most people consider the restyling to not be an improvement over the original. 1949, 50, 51 was the era of the bathtub Lincolns. The top line now was called the Lincoln Cosmopolitan, and a much more pleasing styling in most people's opinion. Came out in 1952, and the top series now became the Lincoln Capri, with the Cosmopolitan downgraded to entry level. These Lincolns were built through 1955, The 1952s had Ford Motor Company's first modern overhead valve V8 engine. And in 1956, Lincolns were completely restyled. This car has the distinction of being the only completely new styling of the 4 cars in this collection. And the engine in it is 368 cubic inches, 285 horsepower. Weight and length are within pounds and 1 inch of the Cadillac of the time, and they received rewards for the styling. These are very stylish cars. We're turning back into our driveway now. Head back, live on this long gravel driveway. This is where the cars are garaged. This car originally came from Colorado, the Denver area. It's a restored car. Very nice running car. A beautiful, impressive looking car in the yellow and black color scheme. These are original colors, the mid-1950s are well known for the 2 and even 3-tone color schemes, very bright colors. The interior in it is also in the yellow and black. Lincoln sales greatly increased. They just about doubled, or maybe even more than doubled, over the 55s. These cars are very well received. They were designed to outdo Cadillac, and they probably did in the styling department. They sold more than 50,000, but Cadillac sold more than 150,000, even in a 3-year-old design. So they didn't quite accomplish overtaking Cadillac, at least not in the sales race. We'll stop the video now at this point.